The starship Aurelia's Promise broke through the lilac-colored clouds of the planet Valeria, its hull shimmering under the twin suns. Inside the observation deck, Ilara, princess of the Valerian Dominion, stood motionless as her homeworld swelled into view. Her silver skin, once radiant with the pride of her royal lineage, now flickered with nervous bioluminescent ripples. In her arms, she held a small, sleeping infant wrapped in a thermal blanket. Her daughter, half Valerian, half human. Behind her, footsteps approached. "You okay?" asked Daniel Harris, her husband, a human who'd grown used to being far from Earth ever since he'd fallen in love with a woman from another star. Ilara exhaled softly. "My mother. She will not receive this news easily. Interspecies unions are still forbidden among the Valerian elite." Daniel offered a reassuring smile, though worry shaded his blue eyes. "We'll face her together. That was always the promise." Ilara nodded, but the tension in her posture betrayed her fear. Not fear for herself, but for her daughter, little Lyra, who slept peacefully despite the enormous political storm her existence might unleash. The ship landed on the royal landing platform, where the high towers of the crystal citadel spiraled upward like carved ice. Rows of guards in shimmering armor awaited them, spears crackling with electric energy. And at the center of the procession stood Queen Melina, her immense, flowing robes fluttering in the wind, her crown emitting a soft, pulsating glow. Her eyes, bright silver and sharp as plasma blades, fixed first on Ilara, then on the human at her side. A hush swept over the guards as the royal family approached. "Ilara," the queen said, voice resonating like distant thunder. "You return after 5 cycles without permission. And with a human?" Her gaze narrowed. "Explain yourself." Ilara stepped forward, cradling the bundle in her arms. "Mother, I bring someone far more important than status or tradition." She gently pulled back the blanket, revealing the child's small face. Gasps rippled through the guards. Queen Melina's eyes widened, her luminous brows lifting. She stepped closer, staring at the tiny creature with soft curls of pale silver hair, her Valerian heritage shining through, and warm human features. Is this my granddaughter?" the queen whispered. Ilara swallowed. "Yes. Her name is Lyra." The queen reached out tentatively, almost afraid to touch her. "But how? You know the laws. The DNA codes, the royal mandate." "I know," Ilara interrupted gently. "But the universe is larger than our traditions. And love is not bound by DNA." Daniel bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, I understand this is a shock. But I love your daughter, and I will do whatever it takes to protect our family." The queen's gaze swept over him. "You understand nothing. A human cannot comprehend what this means for Valeria." Ilara bristled, holding the child closer. "Lyra is not a threat. She's a bridge between worlds." But Queen Melina wasn't listening. Guards stepped forward, waiting for orders. The queen turned away, robe shimmering. "Bring them to the throne hall. This matter demands judgment." The Hall of Radiant Echoes was carved from crystal or that hummed softly with ancient energy. Holographic murals of past rulers floated in the air, watching as Ilara and Daniel were escorted inside. Queen Melina ascended her throne, a towering structure that seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. "Ilara," she announced, "you have defied royal command. You abandoned your diplomatic duties, you concealed your location, and you engaged in forbidden genetic fusion with an off-world species." Daniel stepped forward. "With respect, Your Majesty, it wasn't forbidden on my world." Melina's eyes flashed. "This is not your world, human." Ilara's voice trembled with fury. Mother, Lyra is innocent. Innocent, perhaps, Melina conceded. But her existence fractures the purity of the royal bloodline. A murmur swept through the council members who stood behind the throne. Ilara held her ground. Then let the bloodline fracture. Silence. Even Daniel felt the weight of that sentence. The Valyrian bloodline had remained unbroken for 12 millennia, maintained through careful genetic compatibility rituals and royal selection. For a princess to reject it so openly was unthinkable. Queen Melina rose slowly from her throne. You would throw away tradition for this human. For love, mother, Ilara cried. For a future shaped by connection rather than isolation. Daniel squeezed her hand, grounding her. The queen's gaze fell again on the baby. Lyra blinked awake, staring up at the throne room with curious, luminous eyes. Eyes that flickered with warm gold and silver. Something softened in Melina's expression. But the tension remained. The council will deliberate, she said finally. Until then, the child remains under royal observation. Daniel stiffened. You're not taking our daughter. Guards stepped forward, weapons humming. Ilara interposed herself. Mother, please. Don't do this. Melina hesitated. Her gaze flickered to the baby again. Lyra cooed, innocent, unafraid, and reached out a tiny hand toward the queen. Her small fingers brushed Melina's. A jolt of warm energy pulsed through the room. The crystal murals flickered, then glowed brightly, as if responding to Lyra's touch. The humming deepened, vibrating through the hall. The ancient crystals recognized her. Counselors gasped. What is this? Melina whispered. Ilara looked stunned. Lyra. She's connecting to the ancestral network. Daniel frowned. Is that good? Good. Ilara breathed. It's impossible. Only full-blooded Valyrian heirs can activate these crystals. No hybrid should be able to do this. But Lyra wasn't struggling. She simply smiled, her tiny fist still extended toward the queen, as if inviting her closer. Melina slowly knelt. She can access the lineage memory. The royal resonance. She is legitimate. A wave of realization washed over the council. Their murmurs shifted from fear to awe. Ilara's eyes filled with tears. Mother, please accept her. Melina cupped the baby's cheek gently. Her rigid posture softened into something fragile. I feared what this would mean. I feared losing the traditions that guided us for so long. She looked up at Ilara. But perhaps, tradition is meant to evolve. Daniel exhaled with relief. Does that mean? Yes, the queen said, rising with Lyra cradled in her arms, surprisingly natural. The child will stay with her parents. She studied Daniel. And you, human. Welcome to Valyria. The father of my granddaughter. Ilara embraced her mother, their luminescent skin merging in a soft glow, an ancient sign of reconciliation. Lyra giggled between them, her mixed heritage no longer a threat but a promise. The queen addressed the council. Let it be known, Valyria will not fear the future. We will embrace it. The hall erupted in respectful bows. That night, under the twin moons, the royal gardens shimmered with bioluminescent flowers. Daniel and Ilara walked together, Lyra between them, nestled against her mother's shoulder. I never expected your mother to accept me, Daniel admitted. Ilara smiled. Neither did I. But Lyra changed everything. They paused near a crystalline fountain, where ripples of light danced across the water. Daniel stroked his daughter's small hand. What do you think her future will look like? Ilara gazed at the horizon, where stars stretched endlessly. A future where worlds are united instead of divided. She leaned her head on his shoulder. A future she'll help create. And somewhere near the palace, Queen Melina stood watching from a balcony. Her eyes no longer filled with fear, but wonder, whispering to the night, "My granddaughter, the bridge between stars." Weeks passed, and the initial shock that had rippled through the Valyrian dominion began to settle. What had once been whispered as scandal now circulated as prophecy. Scholars traveled from distant star systems to study the hybrid child whose presence awakened the ancient crystal lineage. Diplomats sought meetings, eager to understand what this meant for the balance of power among the worlds. But within the crystal citadel, far from the noise of politics and speculation, life took on a quieter rhythm. Ilara gently rocked Lyra on a balcony overlooking the glowing gardens. Daniel walked beside them, his hand resting on the rail as he marveled at the ethereal blue fireflies drifting between the flowers. Above them, the twin moons cast ribbons of silver across the sky. Queen Melina stepped forward, her robe flowing like molten starlight. She gazed at the child, her granddaughter, with a softness no court advisor could have predicted. "She grows stronger every day," the queen murmured. Ilara nodded proudly. "And more curious." Lyra reached out toward the sky, her little fingers glowing faintly, an unmistakable sign of her Valyrian inheritance. But when she turned her head and laughed, the laugh was unmistakably human. Daniel looked at the queen. "I hope she can have a life that's normal." Melina's expression softened. "She may never be ordinary, but she will be cherished and protected." Her voice deepened with conviction. "For she represents the first thread of a new tapestry, one woven between worlds." Ilara stepped closer to her mother. "We want her to grow without fear, without the weight of ancient rules." Melina's gaze drifted to the horizon. "Then I must ensure this kingdom becomes a place where she can do so." She exhaled slowly. "Change is never simple. But perhaps Lyra came to show us that the old ways were never meant to last forever." A moment of peaceful silence wrapped around them. Then the faint hum of the palace crystals rose in the air, soft, melodic, as if singing. Lyra blinked and reached toward the sound. The crystals glowed in response. Daniel looked to Ilara. "She's doing it again." Melina's eyes widened. "No, she isn't activating the lineage memory this time. She is communicating." The humming deepened. Lights pulsed across the palace towers. Energy flowed through the air like shimmering threads of starlight, weaving patterns that only Lyra seemed to understand. She giggled and tapped the air, shaping the lights into glowing ripples. Ilara whispered, awestruck, "She's connecting to the planetary grid." "Impossible," Melina breathed. "Not even the strongest Valyrian monarchs could do that at her age." Daniel held their daughter as Lyra cooed at the swirling lights. "Maybe that's the point," he said softly. "Maybe she's meant for a future none of us can define." The lights slowly faded, returning the palace to stillness. Lyra yawned and nestled her head against Daniel's chest. A gentle breeze swept across the balcony. Queen Melina looked at her daughter and son-in-law, not as a monarch judging them, but as a mother accepting fate's design. "From this day forward," she said quietly, "Lyra will be raised not as a symbol or a secret, but as the heir to a new era." Ilara and Daniel exchanged a relieved, grateful glance. Melina stepped forward, touching Lyra's tiny hand. "She will unify more than our bloodlines. She will unify our futures." Below them, the glowing gardens shimmered brighter, as though the planet itself acknowledged the promise made that night. Ilara leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder. Melina stood at their side, no longer resisting change but welcoming it. And above them, the twin moons crossed paths, an omen Valyrian legend said, that marked the beginning of a new destiny.